grammatical accuracy and communication are not the same thing, and thinking that they are can actually hold you back. I'm Michelle, a language and communications trainer, and today I want to talk about something I've seen come up again and again with professionals using English in the workplace. Now, before we dive in, a quick note on the term non-native English speaker, or non-native speaker of any language, really. I use this phrase because today it's one that is commonly said, but I want to be clear, it's an oversimplification. All right, language identity is much more complex than a native, non-native binary. So for today's episode, when I say non-native, I mean someone who didn't grow up using English as part of their early education or home life. I do not mean someone who is not born inside of quote-unquote native-speaking countries like the US, the UK, etc. Okay? I just want to be very clear that this term is very limiting, and for many people who were not born in these countries, they've needed to carry this term because others in society choose to see them in this way. I will do a future episode on the problems we have inside of the language industry and the irony of having imperfect terms. But I want to let you know that when I say non-native, I mean those who identify as non-native and not those who simply fall inside of the complex mix that is the larger English-speaking world. Let's start with a hard truth. You can have excellent grammar and still not be an effective communicator. Surprised? That's because communication is about connection, clarity, and understanding, not how well you complete an academic exercise to perfection. And I really want to emphasize this because while there are a few people I can name in the industry now who are starting to make this more and more clear, this still is a predominant issue for many people who came out of traditional language education or systems. I work with clients every day who have already spent years improving their grammar. They've mastered conditionals, they know their tenses, and they even understand article usage better than most native speakers, truthfully. And yet they still feel invisible in meetings, misunderstood in emails, or unsure during presentations. And that's because the workplace, the real workplace, all right, not the simulated one out of textbooks, the real life working world, does not reward correctness or perfection for grammar or advanced vocabulary, which is a conversation we're going to get into in the future. It rewards clarity, confidence, cultural fluency even, relative to the needs of the organization or team. Being able to do what you need to do in the language that is required with the tools that you have, not how high your score is or even what your language level is when looking at grammar. Now, this is not to say that grammar is not important. And I say this again and again. I do train with those who work with me one-on-one. We work on grammar, but it is not the only thing that we work on. This is why I make a distinction between language training and communications training, because while they do overlap, they are not the same. So let's break it down. When I focus on language, I'm helping clients refine sentence structure, vocabulary range, pronunciation, listening comprehension, and yes, of course, this includes classical grammar like tenses, conditionals, articles, prepositions, etc. When I focus on communication, I'm helping them navigate tone, assertiveness, managing conflict or interruptions, negotiation, reading between the lines, power dynamics in the workplace, and adaptability, knowing when to be flexible, when to be direct based on their specific environmental conditions, based on their industry, their personality characteristics, and their professional goals. And that's why I say I am a language and communications trainer. I do not choose. I work at the intersection of those two. Because in the workplace, as a non-native speaker, but as a human, you can't separate them. The way you say something and the way someone receives it both matter, and they don't always match up. And while this is true for all people in the workplace, there is an additional challenge presented before non-native speakers. Because they were not raised or educated inside of the language, they have an additional hurdle to overcome when thinking about how this complex set of variables work together. Now let's talk about the workplace specifically. Why is it so important to think about the workplace, not just professionalism, but the place of work? Well, that's because in the workplace there are unspoken rules. And by the way, many people work online now, so when I say workplace, I don't mean the literal office. I mean the environment in which people are working from all over the world, your working world. And these unspoken rules are ones that people have to navigate no matter what their native language is. We'll touch on a few things across these different episodes, but truth be told, there's a performance aspect to communication that goes beyond grammar. And it's something that native speakers have to contend with as well. Because in many places, you're expected to sound concise but friendly, confident but not arrogant, direct but polite. And these expectations are not taught, at least not in a comprehensive enough way. In most standard business English or professional, quote-unquote, English classes. And speaking of, let's address a question I hear a lot. Should I even bother with business English classes? And I first want to break down what business English is for many people, because working as a professional isn't a level, it's a context. And it's one that many people enter, especially if you come from immigration, migration, and whatnot. You enter the professional working world often without an advanced language level. So thinking of it as a linear hierarchy really does not work, and it is completely inappropriate in my opinion. The working world is a dynamic, high-stakes space where communication happens under pressure, between people, across cultures, and now with technology, across countries. Depending on your career path and the conditions in your personal life, you can absolutely be a working professional for decades without ever reaching a language level that's labeled as quote-unquote advanced. Because in addition to the fact that a workplace is a context, not a level, your subject matter expertise does not depend on your language score. I'm going to say that again. Your subject matter expertise, your technical knowledge, all of the skills that you were hired in to do and to use do not depend on your language level or score. That does not mean that others will not evaluate you as such, okay? And that's something we'll get into in future episodes. But your insight as a human, your impact as an individual, your ability to contribute to a team, none of that is solely determined by how perfectly you conjugate verbs or whether your vocabulary is as native-like as possible. And I need more people in this space to understand that. Because unlike the classroom, real-life workplaces do not operate in a hierarchy. There is no basic or advanced when it comes to what you need specific to your position in your company on your team. What's advanced for one person might be totally unnecessary for someone else based on the context of their role, their interactions, and the expectations of their workplace. So no, It is not appropriate to use traditional measures of advanced English to be a high-functioning professional. But like I said, working on communication is often extremely important if the working language is not your native language, because these are the unspoken rules of the working world, right? How you explain what you know. Not only how you talk to people, but how you advocate for yourself, your ideas, your contributions. How you showcase your expertise in a way that feels proportional to what you believe you contribute. That is where most people feel this gap between what they have inside and what they can express outside. And that's why working on communication in conjunction with language, intentionally, strategically, can absolutely help you unlock new levels of confidence, clarity, and effectiveness in your specific role. Language proficiency tests can tell you how well you perform under academic conditions, but they do not measure how clearly you advocate for yourself, your ideas, and for a specific project in a meeting. They don't capture how well you adapt your tone when writing to different colleagues or different stakeholders in the workplace. They don't assess your ability to read the room or shift your delivery mid-presentation when something is clearly not landing the way you intend. So let's backtrack. When people ask me, should I take a business English course after I finish advanced English? I often say that is the wrong question. I hope you're also seeing that this is what we were building towards. Rather than seeing it like, I'm going to have B1, then B2, then business English. Stop all of that right now, please. And instead, ask yourself, what communication challenges am I currently facing at work? And this is so important for people who are already working. If you are thinking that you need to wait to be advanced in order to start working on business communication, that is absolutely the wrong. I never say things are wrong unless they're wrong. That is not the right question to be asking. We're not measuring the same things. So ask yourself, what challenges in communication, interpersonal communication, am I currently facing right now at work? And then ask yourself, what kind of support do I need to handle those better? What can I bring in to help me communicate with more confidence and clarity in a way that my inner and outer worlds can be more proportional? Those are the questions to be asking. It's not about leveling up your English by traditional standards. It's about leveling up how you use the language in the spaces where it often matters most. Remember, working as a professional is not the same as passing a language test. It is not a level. It is a context. It is a dynamic, high-stakes environment where communication depends on so many more things than just grammatical accuracy. Now you might be wondering, why? How? How come my business English teachers didn't tell me this before? Well, okay, I have my personal opinions on why, but I want to remind you that language doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in conversations, in decisions, in deadlines, in meetings, in team messages, in 1,000 moments or more, where clarity, nuance, or tone makes all the difference. And that raises another thing. Business English is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Like many classroom-based approaches, it will not capture the nuances of your real-life situation, because what makes a professional work situation or environment varies in infinite ways. It's non-standard, because even across the same industry, your situation will change based on your company, based on your team, based on who you have to talk to, based on the types of work that you do. We aren't robots going into offices, sitting at our cubes. I know it feels like that sometimes, but we are not those when it comes to communicating with each other. So business English might give you a few formal expressions or email templates, and that's really good. That's a start, at least. But it will not teach you how to navigate unspoken expectations, understand the complexity of team dynamics, adjust, moderate your expression, your tone, your delivery based on who you're talking to. And it will not, and it is not, the gold standard for how to conduct yourself in the workplace. And if you're using business English as a guide and it's not working out like how it happens for most people, I would say, this is why. It does not mean that it is not useful. It means that you have to understand how to use it. How can you incorporate what you're learning in your business English classes and make the connection to your own situation? Also remember that not everyone speaks English the same way. Even with perfect grammar, many professionals still face moments where they're misunderstood. And it's not because their English was wrong, right? Communication problems happen even amongst native speakers. And you can understand this because everyone is a native speaker of at least one language, right? If you think about the amount of times that you've had miscommunication with someone, and it was not due to the fact that you spoke different native languages, be very careful always pinning your challenges on language when in fact it's communication. So if you've been told to just improve your grammar or just be better at the language, change your accent, change the way that you say things, match what native speakers do, and everything will fall into place. This is an outdated concept, and it is one that is creating so many more obstacles than good in this world. This is my personal opinion. And I need to tell all of the people who have been told this that you are not broken, okay? You are not somehow inferior because you weren't born into a language. But you are navigating a much more complex environment. You're navigating systems that others do not need to. It's why I will come on here and speak a little bit more about the work that I do, my training approach, and the shift I hope will happen as time passes in the world. And no matter where you're listening from, how you're choosing to approach your learning and growth, just remember that language and communications training has to be about more than just accuracy or conformity. It has to be about you. Please just remember that it has to be you, your goals, your context, your voice. Thank you for tuning in to our first real solo episode of We Cultivate the Pod. I will be sharing more episodes like this, looking at the parts of communication people don't always talk about, pulling from my work as a trainer, my own experiences navigating different spaces, and the patterns I see again and again, no matter the field. If this resonates with you, please do share this episode or any of the previous episodes I've already published on the pod. I am so ecstatic to be opening up this piece of it. Make sure you get connected with me. Feel free to drop me a message on social media or directly on my website. I'm Michelle, founder of We Cultivate, host of We Cultivate the Pod, and I will see you next time.